Well, good morning. My name's Nigel. I'm the European President of God Squad, and I'm filming here from St. Peter's Church, which I'm the vicar of as well. So I'm just going to go there now, and I thought it would be a good location to film this because of the subject matter that I'm talking about. But welcome to the reflection today, and we'll go in a minute. It's 850 years old, the church, so it's got some history, and it will have had some traditions in the past. So come with me. So this is within the church, and we've just got St. Peter's breakfast, Saturday breakfast today. And if we're coming to the kitchen, you'll actually see the cook, which is actually my wife, and she's at the minute cooking eggs and what's that, tomatoes and beans, and then the assistant chef is here as well. So here we are in the main body of the church, and this is where we worship on Sundays. But the reason I thought it'd be relevant to film here is first because of the analogy that I'm going to give you, a true story in a moment. But also coming through, it's our Saturday breakfast time, and cooking different types of food, and that bacon on the pan, which would be unclean in the Old Testament times, but Jesus says nothing that goes into a person makes them unclean. So I'm going to read the passage, and it's from Mark 7:14 to 23. So again, Jesus called the crowds to him and said, "Listen to me, everyone, and understand this. Nothing outside a person can defile them by going into them. Rather, it's what comes out of a person that defiles them." After he'd left the crowd and entered the house, his disciples asked him about this parable. "Are you so dull?" he asked. "Don't you see that nothing that enters a person from the outside can defile them? For it doesn't go into their heart, but into their stomach, and then out of their body." In saying this, Jesus declared all foods clean. He went on, "What comes out of a person is what defiles them. For it's out of a person's heart that evil thoughts come. Sexual immorality, theft, murder, adultery, greed, malice, deceit, lewdness, envy, slander, arrogance, and folly. All these evils come from inside and defile a person." Well, one morning an old friend came up from the north to visit. Well, we'd met in Morecambe many years ago, having shared a flat, and just prior to letting me sleep in his Ford Escort boot for a week, which I spent in there. Well, this was in the early 80s, where crashing out in various places was quite commonplace. Well, I decided to take him to our local cathedral on a very cold day, which was even colder in the cathedral at the time. But my friend's fairly affluent, and he lives a slightly different lifestyle to me. He enjoys golf at his local exclusive golf club, and all that comes with it. So a cultured walk around the cathedral before grabbing a real ale appealed to him as much as it did to me. So as we walked along the aisle of the cathedral, we heard what could only be described as a loud yelp. And it was aimed at me. And it echoed from one side of the cathedral to the other. I mean, you could imagine it echoing across here. So everyone looked round to see who the problem was, and it was me. And it consisted of the words, "Get your hat off." And this is actually the very hat I was wearing as I was walking through that cathedral. I wasn't in worship, but the guy who said it, he had this cultural impression of what was right for some people, not for everybody. So I had a few interesting words when I caught up with him. And my friend was even more incensed than I was. And he rightly pointed out that a respectable looking man with his flat cap and formal wear, looking really smart, he just walked by prior to us with not a word about this man's hat. That it was highly disrespectful, yelling across a building rather than coming up and having a quiet word. And I know that not everybody's like this. It was this individual really which was problematic. Well, the reality was that in my slightly worn leather jacket, with my beanie, this hat on, I didn't look as respectable as the man with the formal attire. Well, ironically, at the time, I'd just been ordained in the very cathedral. And wearing different attire with very different attitudes from the officials. And there has been the case several times, particularly when biking, a judgment call had been made based on my outward appearances, which would have been very different if I was wearing my clerical collar, which I've got on today, just because I'm in the church. Well, the perceived respectability based on a religiosity was more important than having an opportunity to take a friend with no faith into a place of Christian worship. Well, in this passage in Mark, Jesus is once more challenging hypocrisy within the religious structures of those who are so concerned about the external rituals that they've neglected the important inner reality. And I know some rituals are important, but they've got to have meaning, and they've got to be laced with mercy and love. Food can give you a bad stomach, but what comes out of a person's heart, as Jesus says, is what defiles them. And I know this, the food that we'll be eating today at this breakfast will certainly not give us a bad stomach. But yeah, food can do that to us. But he said what comes out of a person's heart, as Jesus says, is what defiles them. In other words, these are the symptoms of a different kind of sickness, not physical but spiritual. In reality, food in itself has no effect on our moral or spiritual state. Neither does the way we dress, what we wear, including those in God's squad with our leather cut-offs, or tattoos or piercings. Instead, as Jesus said, it's what comes from the heart which damages our inner integrity. So for us, let's keep our hearts pure. For us in God's squad, let's get that right as we ride together in our ministry on the road. Let's do the right thing. Let's make sure our hearts are right, what we say, what we do, and concentrate on that. Amen. Well, good morning. My name's Nigel. I'm the European President of God's Squad, and I'm filming here from St. Peter's Church, which I'm the vicar of as well. So I'm just going to go there now, and I thought it would be a good location to film this because of the subject matter that I'm talking about. But welcome to the reflection today, and we'll go in a minute. It's 850 years old, the church, so it's got some history, and it will have had some traditions in the past. So come with me.